So we are talking about the gap analysis item number 1, and we really just need to demonstrate that we are able to retrieve a CCDA file. It does not necessarily, it needs to be coming from someplace. It does not necessarily need to come from an EHR system, nor does it need to be a certified EHR system.
Correct.
Okay. So that's our first part, is that we think that the CCDA format would help us get this EHR data that reflects this that part of the.
And let me ask another point. You mentioned labs, but I believe we have to use an actual lab file for lab results. Don't we melt it, or can the lab just come into that CCDA?
Say it again?
We can do it. For the clinical decision support, we have to have lab data. And so I didn't know if having the lab data coming in as far as that CCDA would be good enough, or we also need to import maybe a sample lab file that has some lab values.
So it depended on the requirement, and without pulling up the requirement, well, 1 second.
Yeah.
Let me just.
Yeah, I didn't know we'd have to do one file. We could do 2 files, but we could do it. We could use a separate. Yeah.
Is there anything off this file that you'd like me to pull up?
Yeah, I was just double checking that. I'm sorry, it's just because there's a lot of requirements, and that some of them have data, test data, some don't. Without pulling up the requirement, I'm not sure if this one has it. It looks like this does not have test files that you can use. It would be vendor supplied. So in other words, you create it.
Okay. Meaning if it's vendor supplied, we create it. It does not necessarily need. It can come from a CCDA or HL7 lab message.
Yeah, it just depends on each criteria. So for this one that we're looking at, there is no specific data set, to my understanding.
Okay. All right, excellent. So our next thing that we're thinking, we have an issue that ASAM, this tool is not using SNOMED terminology, it's using DSM-5. And so we are going to map the DSM-5 terminology to SNOMED so that and it's not that many problems, but all the problems will be able to demonstrate, for meaningful use mode, the SNOMED codes, the corresponding SNOMED codes.
Perfect.
So that's a recommendation.
Yeah, SNOMED terminology is not mandatory. As long as we can map it to the mandatory to the SNOMED codes, then we're fine for testing.
Oh, really? So right now, if DSM-5 maps to the SNOMED code, do we need to do anything then, or
we just have to for testing? We have to show that mapping.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Does it need to be showed in the system, or can we say, hey, these are related? Do you need something explicitly in the software to see that this equates to a SNOMED, or?
Let me just check a section of the requirement.
Okay. If you saw a problem with the SNOMED code next to it, that would probably pass the test off, as far as that goes.
I'm sorry, say that again?
If a problem is displayed and we have a SNOMED code in parentheses right next to that certainly would pass. Yeah. And the only question now is there might be other variants, but for sure if we show the SNOMED code next to the problem, that would demonstrate that we're using SNOMED terminology.
That's correct.
Okay. The next one is ASAM are not currently using RxNorm terminology for the medications. And so we're thinking that we should use add the RxNorm codes or the terminology next to our medications as well. So that's the next gap. Next one is for lab results. We do not use LOINC for lab results. Oh, and we were thinking on this one, and this is where Jim's question popped up there. We were thinking that we could use the HL7v2 lab message to integrate lab results, but if the CCDA has lab results in it, is it sufficient that we could just pull the lab results from the CCDA and not have to support two different file formats if we can just get the data in with the CCDA. For example,
you mean the line codes? Yeah.
Yeah. So as long as we're showing link codes next to the lab results, you don't care if we get those link codes from a standard CCDA file or an HL7v2. And I guess that's what I'm like. Is there any reason why we couldn't use link from the lab results we're getting in perhaps a CCDA? That's that question of Milton there.
Okay, sorry. I wasn't sure who that question addressed to.
Oh,
so,
no worries.
I'll just clarify how testing, what we're doing for testing. If we do not have to validate any type of codes, either SNOMED or loan codes for this requirement, then we don't have to specify where that information is.
Okay.
And just reviewed the 8 right now, and there's nothing asking us to verify that the correct information matches the test data.
Okay.
So for A8, we are not concerned about the codes. There are other criteria that we will have to look at into that, and then this is where the subject comes in of saying that SNOMED codes does not necessarily need to be there, but they need to map. So for A8,
okay.
That's not required.
Okay. And then this last one, that one actually this was an invented demographic one that we decided was not relevant. That OMB race and ethnicity codes are not a part of an interoperability requirement for clinical decision support. So we had removed that gap. So technically, there's 9.
Okay.
So the next one is therapeutic guidance based on EHR information. So we found that right now the patient medications are not impacting the guidance that's provided by the level of care recommendation. We are in touch with an ASAM doctor who could make it so that it is providing guidance based on medication that you're taking. So basically, what we're going to do is make it so that the report gives different guidance based on what medication that you're on, and we can demonstrate that the report is providing one type of guidance for a patient who's on a certain medication, and then a different type of guidance for a patient that's not on that medication. Is that, Milton, is that kind of what you're looking for approving this patient medication being used as part of the guidance?
So I apologize. It seems like we're going a little too far into this based on what you have. Okay. I'll go over exactly what I need to see for clinical decision support. Okay. And then we can maybe address some of these gaps that you have, and then in that fashion. Okay. So 1 second.
Do you want me to show your screen, or I could show the test procedure on my screen if you want?
That's fine. Either way, once I find it, well, actually you just found it right now. So those are what you're looking at right now, pretty much the high-level overview of exactly what we're looking for in meeting this report.
Okay.
So I believe that the last question you had was identifying number 3.
Oh, actually, I think I dropped down to 4. The diagnostic and therapeutic reference resources, and I can show you kind of what we have. Right now. Right now, our guidance looks like this. There's a book that this comes from, and we'll put in the source there. But ultimately, we get a level of recommendation at the very end of this report.
Gotcha.
Okay. And this comes from this book, from the American Society of Addictive Medicine, so we would have some ability to provide a bibliographic citation. In fact, I've got an example of what that might look like right here. So this is the doctor that we're working with right here. So, they are, they wrote the book for it's no longer the ASAM placement criteria, it's called just ASAM criteria. And these are the authors, and we can point you to whatever the information is on the book that they have for that. So I think we're probably in good shape for, and that's my last gap. But there is a therapeutic resource reference. What would you be looking to see? In fact, is that satisfied in and of itself with a report? What would you like to see in terms of bibliographic citation?
Yeah, it just depends. This would be dependent on the problem or medication or the other 4 areas that we're looking for under clinical decision support. Say, for example, if someone has diabetes, that would give them some type of information where they could read up more on that type of problem that they have.
Thank you.
So this is fine, where you're referencing that. There's no exactly one way to show this. The one that I'm familiar with is called Blue Button, I believe it's called.
Okay.
You could use whatever you like as long as I have to see it being a function of the of your product.
Okay. Is this like an example? You're talking about this Blue Button site right here?
Yeah, and then the other name for it is Info Button.
Okay.
That's that context-aware HL7 standard.
Okay.
And that's actually mentioned in the test procedures.
Oh, I thought that was something a little bit different. I do have that, this Info Button right here.
Okay.
I thought that was just, from what I looked, it appeared to be a standard used to retrieve a CCDA or a patient
No,
file.
that's information actually.
Actually, Blue Button did put together a nice program for CCDAs. That's a different, there's several programs that they have ongoing.
Okay, maybe I mislabeled this spec then, because this one seems to be kind of technical of how you can use this spec to get information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is your blueprints pretty much.
Okay, so this is different than the reference, right? Or is this what a reference looks like?
No, the reference is similar to what you showed.
Okay.
That's
like
a button. That's a button that expedites getting you to that reference.
Okay.
So that's what needs to be in the system, some type of information where you click on and you gather more information.
Okay. So if it took you to the ASAM website, you need, because this is, it's published in a book. I think they are coming out with an online version of the book. Is this something that looks like, similar to, MLA citation standard?
I'm not familiar.
Or is some sort of a research standard, or we could have an example of what that looks like. I'm sure, Jim, are you clear enough on this in terms of the citation? When we spoke about it last time, it seemed that we probably had the information, we just didn't exactly have a specific format of what it should look like.
That's right, or we can always just go to Medline Plus, too, for certification purposes. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is, as you said, the Bible of what your whole program's built on, so I don't think you're going to have a problem there.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it is there. We just have to figure out the right way to format that one. So we'll have to tighten that down. But bottom line, there should be a link that takes you to information. We just need to figure out some of those details on that. But in our system, the way that this looks like is there's a link somewhere on that report that gives you more information.
So,
and we've got something like that right, like right here. For example, we've got something like, please refer to the appendix regarding more details, more details regarding dimensional analysis definitions. And that link takes you over to this. Is that something that would work?
Milton, are you, I'm sensing maybe you're a little bit confused about what we're talking about right now, which, we're talking about clinical decision support, and now we're kind of talking about patient education kind of things. Are you a little bit?
Yes. Jim, I am a little bit confused because I thought we were talking about this one right here, the identify diagnostic and therapeutic reference resource.
Right, that's right. And so when a clinical decision, a rule is triggered and the alert comes up, and we got to give that bibliographic reference. They just showed an example of, what they would link to, a bibliographic reference.
Okay.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be necessarily generated by info button or anything else. Just, that bibliographic reference would say, this rule comes from here, and you click on it, and it would go to that thing he had up a minute ago. That clinical background.
Something like this rule comes from here, you click the link, and then something like this shows up.
Yeah, right. You're pretty much verifying that they're not making up.
Right. Okay. So we're good there. Yeah, we're good there.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
So this is one more on the guidance based on EHR information for reference purposes. This is this one right here. Configure clinical decision support interventions and diagnostic and therapeutic reference. Oh, no, not reference resources. This must be this one right here where it pulls it from actual EHR data. And so we have a couple instances where we don't have some of this EHR data driving the guidance. So, for example, patient medications currently is not altering what's showing up on the report. What we're proposing doing is having the report provide different types of guidance based on medication that you're on. And I don't know exactly what those are, but if there's a certain type of medication that you're currently on, the report will guide you to avoid doing this or to pursue doing something else. The report will look different if you have if the patient's taking medication X versus not taking medication X. Is that largely in line? The question to Milton.
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Okay, so this report, currently this report doesn't change if you are, I guess it does right now. If you are taking if you have certain problems, it will indicate that you are, well, actually, no, that's not a medication though. It doesn't change the report. So what we need to do is update this feedback or this guidance that's given so that it will give you guidance if you're taking medication X versus not taking medication X.
So that may well be beyond the scope of certification, sounds like.
Okay.
It's good, but that's more than we need to show probably.
Okay.
I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's actually correct.
Okay, good.
Okay. So just for I could make sure that, just because the way this was presented to me, it kind of threw me off on exactly what you were doing.
Yes.
Let me ask a question. There's going to be triggers in place that will show TDS notification based on the 6 criteria that they have listed on the test procedures. Is that correct?
Yes, we did. What we've envisioned is that when the CCDA is brought in and integrated with the patient's therapeutic record, that will be the item that will enable it to process and give you guidance. So we'll have, the patient will have an assessment, going on in the system. You incorporate or update that information based on your CCDA, and the incorporation of that would cause a trigger to happen, saying, here's our recommendation.
For the 6 instances?
Yes, and we can have as many different test patients as you like.
Right, okay. And by instances you mean problem list, medication list, all those in combination.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And then you have to do at least one combination.
Right.
Yes, and our way that we're intending to have that is we're going to have a screen, this interoperability screen that's able to retrieve a CCDA for a patient, and it will retrieve it, and then it will integrate it, and at the point of integration, our system will evaluate it to see if there's any therapeutic guidance that ought to be given, and it will. It'll say no care is required or care is required, and it should be of this level, as well as other things germane to that patient.
And you will have different users that have the capability to activate such interventions and deactivate?
Yes, I put that in, and I guess I may have put it in the wrong spot, but the security analysis, we're going to have some sort of administrative security where this clinical decision support will show up for some users, but not others, as well as we'll have some ability to change a rule from our system. That is...
but the user can manually make that change, correct?
Correct. We'll have some sort of administrative security over a portion of the ASAM algorithm. So, for example, we could say, hey, anyone that has, that's taking this medication, always, recommend, inpatient care or something like that.
Okay.
And we'll have some sort. You'll see a screen that shows some sort of rule, like given this, then do that, something that when you do something with it, it will impact. It'll make the clinical decision recommendation different. Whether or not if you modify. So someone will have this administrative role where you can modify, activate, or deactivate, or somehow modify the algorithm, the criteria in it, and the therapeutic recommendation will be different.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and I also recall from stage 1 that we needed to have the ability to just say control which users even get these recommendations. Is that still the case?
Control users that what? I'm sorry?
That I get the recommendation. For example, user B doesn't get any clinical decision support notifications, but user A does.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have to show that user B does not have the capabilities to modify notifications.
Oh, it's just a modification. So user A is able to modify the clinical decision support, but user B is unable to do that.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, well then, other gaps in a similar vein, I might get too detailed, but medication allergies, we need to show that the guidance is using medication allergies separately and in combination. Demographics, we need to show that it is, and it already is, providing a recommendation based on demographics or not. We need to show that the lab test results, which are currently not used, but an example of this one would be, a urine test result to see if, if you have a positive screen for substances that you're being treated for, would impact this as well. We just need to show that the clinical decision support is demonstrate that it's using those lab test results. That the recommendation is different when you have a lab result of something versus not having it there. So basically, same item and we need to demonstrate it on medication allergies, demographics, and lab test results. Then the security analysis. Basically, we need to have administrative security, which allows a certain user to be able to modify the clinical decision support rules, but other users that don't have the security role aren't able to. So a user needs to be able to modify.
Yep.
And then this is the other one, the citing of sources for clinical decision support guidance. Conceptually, I'm hearing we are in the ballpark where we have a hyperlink that takes you over to a page that gives you the name of the organizations and the doctors that, authored the guidance that that organization gives on patients. Conceptually, we are in the ballpark there.
Yeah.
There'll be a link. There will be a hyperlink somewhere in our guidance. You click it, and it's going to give you information that looks like this. So those are all of our gaps. So we believe that if we, just to kind of close it up, we believe that if we, one, provide a hyperlink in our clinical decision support, that takes you to the ASAM bibliography information, and then two, have a security role in there that enables some users to modify the criteria versus others. Then, and three, I'm going backwards, show that the guidance is being informed based on these 4 items, and lastly, uses the interoperable standards of CCDA and then the relevant codes. Then a work plan around that one should put us in position for modular certification of clinical decision support for 2014.
Gotcha. Yes. Can you scroll down a little bit more?
Sure.
Actually, is it? No. Go back to where you, I believe there's a, I forgot, I think it might have been B gap. Yeah, right there. Sorry. So you're showing 4. Are you currently doing the other 2?
The other 2, which are those other 2?
Vital signs?
We do, yes, we are currently using vital signs.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're covering all 6 categories.
Well, let me put that in there, and I'll just listen saying, like, we are doing vital signs. That's an idea. I'm glad you're bringing that up. I would rather be thorough. Five.
And then, so I don't see problem list either.
Okay, and that's when we do, and that is actually being used.
Okay.
But I'll,
and that should cover it.
It's currently being used, but it's not showing SNOMED codes.
Okay.
And I think right now it's giving it to you in an aggregate level, and I think what, so from an interoperability standpoint, it's not good, but from a therapeutic guidance part, it is altering it based on that, just as a user SNOMED.
Okay.
I'll update this with a screenshot of this one, but these are not gaps. But it's good to... Okay. Excellent. so those are really all the items there. Jim, based on what you're hearing, I would think the only difference between what we're seeing here and what we discussed before is that we possibly might be able to just use the CCDA for everything, including lab results.
Yeah, that's right.
But this is Wayne. If I could get Milton for one point of clarification that I guess I want to make sure we're all on the same page. For the bibliographic reference, can they stop at the title of the book, or do they have to drill down to that chapter and verse within the book that they're, let's say if it said, Paxil is recommended, and it's in that book, but would they need to go, chapter 22, page 4, paragraph 3, which references that?
So there's two steps to that requirement. One, we actually have to see the information being displayed, seeing the references. Mm-hmm. And the other one is we're just documenting where you're getting that information from. So you could just tell us exactly the title for the second part.
Okay, so the link is there and the title. Perfect. Okay, that's good. That's what I want to make sure that it's stops on the, the link is good. I mean, in other words, it'll open it up, but if it stops at that book that they're referencing, they satisfy the program.
Okay, thanks. Link user to book, and then also then we just, so on testing day, we're going to show a link that takes you to the book. I think change updates to distributing it. And then we just, do you want us to show you something from the book as well to see it came from chapter 26? Or are we just attest to that?
You attest to it on the bibliographical reference. So your question just made me think of, or make sure that we clarify this. So once you triggered a clinical decision support, you get a pop-up window or whatever you create to show that there's something being referenced. What happens after that? What can you do in that pop-up window? Or
well, currently what's happening, the current process before it's meaningfully certified, the story, it basically ends with getting this level of care recommendation. I mean, I think we've got a screenshot of we had demoed the software to Jim, and basically the way it currently goes is we have this green button that shows up on the lower right-hand side. Let me see if I can just move it up to there's a green button that shows up once you have enough information for the software to make a clinical decision support recommendation. Hopefully that bottom part goes. You'll see that green submit button on the lower right-hand side? That is right now, and this will show this differently, but right now, when you're operating in this system, after you have enough information, the system is ready to make a recommendation, the green submit button discreetly shows up in the lower right-hand side. What we plan to do for meaningful use, though, is when you have Joanna Jones pulled up and you incorporate her CCDA from EHR, presumably, you'll see an alert show up that the ASAM software has a clinical decision support recommendation based upon the CCDA that you just imported or integrated.
Okay.
And then it shows and then it says, would you like to see it or something along those lines? And you say, yes, I would. And then right now it's a PDF because the providers like having a standard format showing, the logic for how it got to its decision, and then having a file that they can share with their patient. Is there?
Go back a little bit. The statement that you just made a minute ago was the logic is displayed, meaning the reason and why this window is popping up is. It's telling you. It
says, well, you find out that, hey, the system's ready to provide you a recommendation, and you don't know why until you see the recommendation. So if you take a look, this thing, page 5 is the recommendation right here. Pages 2 through 5 are what it considered to get to its recommendation. So, based on all this information, it's taken in a lot of information on the client in addition to the, your physical health. And it's in its thinking, it says, well, based on their problems, these are the DSM-5 problems. Like this patient has 7 out of 7 problems on alcohol, and 4 out of these problems as it pertains to opiates. And these are SNOMED, will be SNOMED problems, and we can display them presumably here. You could also see it in the software. And it says, based on that, and withdrawal scales, and a bunch of other information that we, have collected on this patient. Some of them are germane to to their, physical health, and others just related to the screener. We conclude the following. She can be considered for treatment in this type of program. It gets down to the level of, the real meat of it is on the last page. But everything up to this point, it kind of provides you the kind of a human readable narrative as to how it came up to, what the software thinks, which the software or the algorithm thinks that this patient in particular ought to be in level 4 treatment.
Okay.
And the reason why I came up with that is because of these 7 dots, these 7 bullet points.
Gotcha. So I'm still not clear if you're actually creating a citation in that notification of what the problem is, or meaning why this is popping up. I know it sounds like you're just referencing where to find that information, unless I'm misunderstood. But the requirement does call out there has to be a citation of in that intervention of why why this notification is popping up, and then
okay,
you could go into detail further if you want to provide that additional.
Okay, so if instead of submit, we could say the American Society for Addictive Medication has a recommendation for your patient. Click here to see it. Would that be?
No, well, I'm thinking more like the example that you have here. You have your blood pressure and your heart rate. You have two structured data.
Yep.
I'm just trying to think of clinical decision support based on these two. I might be completely wrong on this, but let's say they have. Actually, I know I'm wrong on this. High blood pressure and a low heart rate. That creates some type of problem that they could have. That would pop up, meaning that the possibility of having some type of disease or there can be other consequences based on these numbers.
Yes.
That would populate, and then there'll be some type of link telling you why this is populating. And then you go a little further and finding out, investigating further if you like, but you do not have to do that for testing. All we have to do is just see that population and why it's populating, that message.
Okay.
But now, are you saying that if that under that scenario, if what popped up, it says, they got cardiomegaly and it's because of the American Academy of Cardiac Surgeons, would they stop there, or would it say American Academy of Cardiac Surgeons and then their reference says cardiomegaly occurs when blood pressure is high and heart rate is low?
Exactly.
Yeah, you want to go right to this chapter and verse then.
Yes. So
okay,
that
good.
quick statement that clarifies why this is popping up, and then you can create the link if you want to why it's populating. But the link I was looking to see that would be, if you wanted to provide that, you can. It's not necessary for testing. We just, for verification purposes, saying that the notification is just not being made up. We need to document where that information is coming from.
Right.
Okay.
So the example I always make, and I was trying to use something that we're looking at currently, is that for diabetes, high blood sugars, I forgot the other, and overweight will populate. Patient has possible diabetes too. And that would populate based on that. And then if you wanted to research more information, then yes, here, hit this info button. Or here, click this link to go look at more of this information.
Okay. And this one, for this algorithm takes it's a pretty significant algorithm. It takes 400, ranges from 400 to over 1,000 data points that have been heavily researched through federal grants to perform a recommendation. So it's this system works more at a broader level, comprehensive view. So blood pressure is required. You cannot create a level of care recommendation without it. But this particular algorithm requires no less than 400 data points. 5 of them will be the items that we mentioned, but there's a lot of other things as well that are used. So in many, I guess in many respects, this algorithm uses data above and beyond what meaningful use uses. So at a minimum, yes, it does use those, vitals, labs, medication allergies, and problems. But it also takes into account other things too, employment, legal, psychological, things like that.
Yeah, so I have no doubt that your algorithm and your logic is there. I was just more concerned of your notification of what you're actually displaying, since I can't see.
Yeah. So our notification, we would, at least for the meaningful use portion, we would need to show that in part this notification was being generated because of information was just added on vitals.
Yes.
So
not vitals. I'm sorry. Vitals was just an example.
Vitals is an example, but right now we have an alert, and it's the way that we're alerted. It's very it will be more apparent. But right now, that green button shows up because you filled out enough information to give a recommendation. For certification purposes, if instead of a green button, it's a message or something that shows up says, we have a recommendation for you, and right now it's we have a recommendation for you because you filled out enough information, basically. Going forward, though, we could say we have a recommendation because you filled out enough information, in particular, blood pressure, and if we called out in particular the information that was in there, would that be sufficient, demonstrating that this alert showed up because you filled out the information, and in particular, these 5 pieces of information that meaningful use is interested in? Because I guess what I'm hearing, the example I'm hearing is kind of more at the granular level as you're typing information in, and we're planning on having it incorporated from the CCDA. So it's this clinical decision support is being triggered when the CCDA gets put in there. So it's all being typed in at the same time, effectively. The blood pressure, heart rate, and the labs are all going into the patient at the same time. That's just being incorporated from the EHR.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I guess given that, so you're not going to see a data, and the testing purposes, you're not going to really see a data entry part. You're going to see that this patient has a record in this ASAM software, and now we want to incorporate their physical health records in there because the psychiatrists, they do not have blood pressure cuffs. For some reason at this point, they do not take blood pressure and all those items there in the office, so they incorporate a CCDA from the EHR to get these different pieces of information. So what we are kind of envisioning on the screen is there will be a screen that just shows you importing the CCDA, and then upon that being incorporated, you see a notification that there is a recommendation for you to see, or therapeutic guidance that's for you to see on the patient, and we could explicitly call out because the following information was entered. Would that be, would you need to see something more on that, or are we in the right forest?
Well, I'm just So I see a tab that you have patient. So I'm assuming that patient, when you hit that tab, you could see structured data, correct? Readable?
We will. Currently it does not have. It currently does not. We need to have that. It will when we have the ability to retrieve the CCDA. Let me pull it up.
So we'll be able to either see it in field boxes, the information, or in a style sheet, however you want to display it. So the tester, when they're testing you, they could see what currently is in that information, meaning either blank record with just the name, and then you incorporate a CCDA, and then all of a sudden it fills up with the rest of the medical categories, the 6 categories we discussed, and then we could see warnings populate based on what was just been incorporated. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, you would see someone like this, like Joanna Jones. This is what we have right now on her. There's going to be some sort of a button called Incorporate CCDA, or somehow it's going to, some button in here is going to get the CCDA. When that's brought in there, you're going to now be able to see the structured data related to Joanne Jones. Okay. And then we're going to have a next step called Incorporate, or a button that says Incorporate the structured data, something, this Incorporate button. That will take the structured data on Joanna Jones that we just got from the EHR, incorporate that with, the other information that we have on her, and we'll receive an updated notice saying that the therapeutic recommendation has been revised or updated on Joanna Jones due to the 5 elements or whatever you like to see. And then you click it to open it up, because their recommendations lengthy.
Okay.
Is that, from what you're hearing, is that roughly in the ballpark, or is that something we probably need to, should we put together a comp on that to do it?
It's really hard. I'm being 100% honest here. It's really hard to justify, in theory, what it's going to look like. After seeing it and then putting it against the actual requirements, then you'll actually get a straight answer of, yes, that's meeting it, no, you're not meeting it.
Okay.
Without actually seeing what exactly you're doing, it's really hard to tell you if you're meeting the requirements or not.
Okay. Then I guess I would just ask, Jim, do you feel that, from kind of what we've talked about right here, that kind of what we thought? I mean, because you've seen more of these.
Yeah. To me, the big issue was, could we use that CCDA to bring in data? Mm-hmm. And that's very clear. And so, there's we're trying to imagine our mind some of this notification, but to me, that's not a big developmental thing.
Okay.
I think we've got a plan. There's a plan and strategy, and I don't see any big hurdles. It's just, not exactly sure how to do, that notification piece. But by itself, either way, shouldn't be a big thing, I wouldn't imagine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the broad brush functions seem to be in line. What you're hearing from Milton is kind of roughly in line with what we were expecting, although we were pleasantly surprised that that we don't even need to have the HL7B2.
That's right. Right. That was 80% of the whole thing, and once we can just do that CCDA and you can do that, then I think a lot of the hurdles have been removed right there.
Okay. Excellent. So then, for the most part, it sounds pretty promising. And I just want to point out right now, the bulk of our recommendation is in that big PDF document, and we could provide. I'm envisioning that we could do something more than what the green button shows, but we'd have an alert saying there is guidance, and it's based on this, and then click here to see the full report. The guidance doesn't need to pop up on a screen, and the UI. I think Jim, you're pointing out, and I'm validating it. The UI portion, that's kind of a design discussion that we could probably sort out.
Correct.
Milton's more of a perspective of, well, show me the design and I can tell you.
Sure.
But that's what we're using you for, to kind of, you can kind of help us kind of come up with the design that we think would go through Milton. And then Milton, his role would be, after we're all signed up and engaged with him, he could tell us, hey, this comp looks like it's going to pass.
That's right.
Like we did before, we have a pre-testing walkthrough where when we signed up with them, we do the pre-testing thing, and he's going to let us know what he thinks is an issue that we need to resolve before the actual test day.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay,
well, terrific. So then it sounds to me that our analysis is largely validated. The big item from Milton that we got was that we can use the CCDA to incorporate information and this health information, and we can use those test files for it, and that we don't need to use the HL7V2 messages. We also, so actually so I think we basically have validated everything here, unless there's anything I'm missing.
Well, sounds good.
I do have a question.
Okay.
The decision of using the CCDA as a trigger point for you, is that just because of how your system works, and you normally don't do manual entries? Is that correct?
Well, we don't, this is not an EHR, it's kind of an attachment or an add-on to an EHR. So the only real design decision was that integrating EHR information with the clinical decision support would be an active, would be an action a user would need to take. Because this is designed for a clinician or a psychiatrist who's not necessarily a physical health doctor to go through a very thorough interview. It's a 90-minute interview of the patient's psychological status and behavioral status, several other dimensions, and they don't necessarily have the physical information, even though the algorithm requires it. So the thought was that this would enable them to collaborate with someone who's not someone who's more of a physical health person and incorporate their work into their recommendation. So I guess that was kind of our thought. Is that something that's unique or sounds?
That's not normally how we would test it, but that would work as long as we're seeing an update. So,
what do you normally see?
Manual entry.
It's all manual entry?
Yeah, the algorithms in the background, we ask them to show us how you do problem clinical decision support. They put in a problem that they know that will trigger a decision. We see that populate, and then we record it.
Okay. In our part, it's a pretty rich algorithm. So it's I'm guessing the other clinical decision supports are like if this, then this. And our algorithm is extremely long. So it's what we're able to tell you in a kind of quick fashion is, okay, we definitely have enough information to make a recommendation, but we're going to need a little bit of time, like less than a minute, to figure out what that is. Well, Eric probably talked to it probably less than 10 seconds, but it's not something that could be running client side and immediate feedback right now.
Yeah, that's fine. It's testing-wise, I don't see a problem with that. It's just, like I said before, I have to see exactly how you're doing this.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, excellent. Any other questions? All right, well, that sounds good. Eric, did you make it on? I saw that you sent me a link message, and then we just kind of dove right into this.
Yeah, no, I've been on the whole time.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure if there's anything bizarre that you had questions on or anything wild that you want a clarification on from, Milton, definitely let us know. Otherwise, I figure we could probably use, that we've, Jim and Milton have gotten the chance to talk, we could probably, any of those design questions, we could probably use Jim and Wayne to kind of help us figure out that UI portion. And Milton probably wants just more of a final product or closer to final, so he can just, he's going to be a referee based on something he sees and Jim and Wayne can kind of be the conceptual guys to help us go from concept to building something for Milton to see. So.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll be pretty much the quality guy.
All right, excellent. So, all right, well, thank you. Well, Milton, thanks a lot for your time. Thank you a lot on that, and Jim and Wayne and Bear and Eric, and I think we can end this call. I'll have this YouTube recording or video recording up here for our for our records, just to kind of help document this stuff. And that's all I have.
Great.
All right, perfect.
All right.
Have a great day.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep, bye.